Laura Loomer is on here. She's been on a number of times, and I want to thank her for sort of at the last minute changing topics because I had Eliakim on first. I really didn't even know where we were going to go, but that was a good segment, and particularly sensitive because of the Jewish holiday of Tisha B'Av coming on, perhaps already happening when you're listening to this, but it was right before Tisha B'Av in Israel when I talked to him. And Laura's been very outspoken in support of Israel and just in terms of the survival of the West against the Islamic threat, and there's a lot for her to respond to there. And, you know, we originally were going to talk about just social media in general, some of the crap she's getting from the right as well. I had mentioned that Stephanie McWilliams piece, but I guess that can wait. It's an issue that's not going to go away, but I've said enough. Laura, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Eliakim was clearly fired up. He's over there in Israel dealing right in his face with all the, I guess, weak-kneedness of the Israeli government in the face of the Arab threat, and this is something you have not been shy about talking about. So I wanted to get your thoughts.
Well, you know, I tend to agree with everything that he said. I thought that it was really insightful listening to his interview with you, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, my feelings and my language about what the Muslims are doing right now on the Temple Mount, and Israel's decision to take down the metal detectors would probably be a little bit more colorful and intense, but right.
What
about you?
Well, I mean, I said what I thought. I have this weird sort of view of it. Like I mentioned to him that, well, you know, God works in strange ways. Who knows what happened? I mean, look at the 67 war, which is the only reason we're talking about having the Temple Mount in the first place. It was, things were looking really bad for Israel. And then within 6 days, they had not only pushed back all the Arabs who were posing within a week earlier an existential threat to Israel, but they had captured the Golan Heights, they had captured the whole Suez, they had captured the West Bank, and they had captured, perhaps most importantly, the old city of Jerusalem. So I don't, no Jews have been killed, not that the Druze life, the two soldiers, aren't as important, and not that the family in the so-called West Bank wasn't important who was massacred on Shabbat, but I don't know, it just seems like there's something bigger there to me. I can't really put my finger on it, but I don't know. And the fact that Israelis are so unified, how else could they be unified other than by this? I mean, don't you think? I mean, look at Europe. Look at the way Europe reacts.
No, I agree, which is why I completely agree. But, that's why I said I'm angrier than your previous guest expressed, because I had more faith and more hope in Netanyahu, right? I mean, I view Netanyahu as being this very strong leader. I agree with your previous guest when he said that Netanyahu may be one of the world's best politicians, but he's supposed to be a voice for the Jewish people, a voice for Israel, a voice against terror, right? And even here in America, like Americans who lean right, conservatives, have really come to admire Netanyahu and his hardline stance against terror. But it just seems like by backing down and taking away these metal detectors and implementing a $28 million smart security system that is supposed to detect threats without actually having metal detectors and increased armed security, it seems like they're bowing down to Islamists.
Yes. I didn't expect this kind of thing to happen under Trump also, but I just wonder how much of it is even coming from Trump. I mean, Tillerson has not been a friend of Israel. That's the State Department in part. That may be his background working for Exxon. Obviously you're close to the Arabs, and it may be just who he is. I don't know. But
look, I don't like Tillerson. I don't like him.
What is it you don't like about him in particular?
I don't like how aligned he is with the Arabs. I mean, look, he worked with Exxon. Exxon has an enormous presence in the Middle East, right? And he he doesn't take, if you're friends with the Arabs and they're, making you a billionaire, through your oil investments, you're not going to want to criticize them openly. You're not going to, want to implement policies that restrict them so that they have less of an ability to carry out acts of terrorism. In fact, they did the exact opposite. What do? For their first foreign trip, they go to Saudi Arabia and they sign the largest and most expensive arms deal in U.S. history with the Muslims, right? With a Wahhabist terrorist government.
Yeah.
And make no mistake. I mean, the Saudis are funding ISIS. The Saudis are funding, large terror cells all across the world. And right, I mean, look at who is our Secretary of State, right? We have Tillerson, who is in bed with the Saudis, not just politically, but also financially through his own personal business deals. I think it's very inappropriate.
It's amazing what the Saudis have accomplished in terms of just having so much sway over our government. I mean, who would have thought that 100 years ago, that the Saudi Arabians, I mean, the part of the world no one really thought about it. It was a desert. There wasn't oil. But when you look at the Bush family, when you look at so much, maybe Obama was closer to Iran than the Saudis, but it's insane. It's practically biblical to me.
Right, and it's not just our politics as well, but the Saudis, we were originally going to talk about social media on today's interview, but the Saudis are now Twitter's second largest stockholders.
Oh, I didn't know that. I know nothing about that. Can you tell a little bit more there and just share it with the audience?
Well, this isn't even new news. I mean, this is dating back to 2015, but there's a lot of complaints, and I don't know if you've noticed. I for sure have noticed when I post tweets critical of Islam online, I get notifications saying, "Oh, you must delete this tweet, or else we're going to suspend your account." And I posted this. I'll send you pictures. I posted one actually a couple weeks ago. Within 24 hours, 3 of my tweets in which I was critical of Islam and Linda Sarsour were reported, and I was told to take them down.
Really?
And
I've never had that experience with Twitter. With Facebook, yes, but not Twitter, which I'm not quite as active on.
I had the experience with both, though. So in 2011, Prince Al-Walid bin Talal invested about $300 million into Twitter. And as of 2015, he owned about 35 million shares of Twitter stock, which made him the company's second largest shareholder. Mm-hmm. So when people say that Twitter is Sharia compliant, it really is Sharia compliant. I mean, the Saudis practically own Twitter.
Interesting. I mean, we've heard a lot about their partial ownership of Fox News, which I don't think is that high anymore. But
it used to be like 33%.
Yeah, I think it's gone down. I'm not an expert on this, and Facebook is well known. I've had Joe Newby on a couple times, and he's written a book about Facebook censorship. I was not aware of this, really. I always thought Facebook was worse than Twitter, but apparently not. And that's important to you because a lot of your bread and butter is on Twitter. The reason people know your name, aside from a couple of the Hillary Clinton, and the Shakespeare in the Park events you did, is really you have a big Twitter following now. And
yeah, I mean,
they could cut it off
huge,
at any time.
But it's the same. I believe it's the same Prince that owns. He's a co-owner of Fox News,
it is,
or owns a large share at least. And it's the same Prince who also is Twitter's second largest shareholder. So it's really concerning because you see these people, regardless of whether or not Trump and Tillerson and Ivanka and Jared go over there and have a conversation about human rights, about the advancement of the Middle East and the moves they're supposedly making to create a more equal and fair society for their citizens. It's not happening, right? I mean, they've had many chances to change or modernize their Wahhabist society, but there's a reason why things aren't changing. I mean, the people are very comfortable in this lifestyle. They're very comfortable living under Sharia law.
Right.
You look at Muslims who escape those societies and they come to our own countries, right? And I know we're kind of like steering off topic now,
but it's fine.
There's a study came out that said that 51% of the Muslims who live in the United States would prefer to live under Sharia law than the United States Constitution. So and those are just the Muslims who admit it. So you have majority of the Muslims in this country who prefer a barbaric legal system that promotes inequality and hatred over our own American values.
And what's shocking is a lot of those people are women who are voting for it too.
Right, and this holds true, all over the world. So if you look at Israel as well, the only democracy in the Middle East, it goes for them. So the Muslims that are there, the Muslims carrying out these attacks in the Temple Mount, it's the same way. So when I see the Israeli government taking measures to make the area more insecure and put their own citizens at risk to these people who value ideology over life, it's shocking. I just expect more from Netanyahu.
Yeah. Well, it's having the effect, it's a little different over there than the two-party system we have over here, in the sense that all the trashing of Bush, including from the right, ended up getting us Obama to some extent. But over there, it's pushing the nation rightward. I mean, it may have been part of this is what put Netanyahu back in office rather than someone to the left. The country as a whole is moving rightward. And it may be that Netanyahu just can't be taken seriously anymore because the country's moved to the right and, more serious about realizing that there can't ever be peace with Muslims who hate them. And it's just an inevitable development. And I'm not sure that's necessarily a bad thing, even though during the 3 weeks being before Tisha B'Av, which is an interesting timing, of course, it's been a little tough to swallow, but there has not been loss of life, which is the most important thing, other than the Druze and the family in the West Bank. And frankly, that could have happened regardless of what was going on in the Temple Mount. I don't know. I hate to sound wishy-washy, but I just believe that events we can't always interpret on the surface, especially when it comes to Israeli history. Now, you took a little bit of an exception with something I said about the demographics and the relevance of non-observant Judaism, and it's fine to disagree with me, and I want to give you a chance to talk about that.
Well, no, I mean, you were having this discussion about the future of Israel and the future of the politics and the people moving more to the right, and how it will affect their policies on terror and future security measures to secure Israel. And then one thing you said was, quote, non-religious Jews in the West are not relevant to anything in the Jewish future.
More the Jewish future, yeah.
To the Jewish future. And I mean, I disagree with that because look, I mean, you were having a conversation about Europe and how in the United States and Europe and Israel, the thing that we all have in common right now is we're experiencing this invasion and the attack on behalf of Muslims, right? Who have this desire to destroy us and replace us with their own ideology. And really ultimately just expand a caliphate. But, I disagree because I'm not religious at all. I consider myself to be Jewish, right? I'm culturally and ethnically and politically Jewish. And I would say that I do more for the Jewish future and Jews living in the West than a lot of religious Jews on the left who are living in the West.
I would have to respond by saying you, Laura Loomer, are an outlier. I mean, let's just say have a little bit more of a forum, a little more active than the average secular Jew in the West. I think we can probably agree on that. Right. And it's really, I mean, first of all, you're what, 23 years old?
Yeah, 24.
24, okay, same difference. But, so you're young. I mean, and frankly, if I were to bet, I would bet that within 5-10 years, you will probably be more observant. If you actually go to services, I can't imagine you feel comfortable in a Reform synagogue where the rabbi is, kind of effeminate, and it's basically, I joke about these places, I call them base Obama, and that it's just political, and conservative is just frankly dying. It's aging populations. It doesn't know what it is, and the reality is, Chabad is taking over so much. Obviously, that's not the only Orthodox way, but it's done much better with outreach to Jews who are not traditionally observant but want to feel comfortable. And here in the Daytona Beach area, it's amazing how people from the Reform and conservative synagogues just come on Saturday afternoons to the Orthodox Chabad synagogue. It's a particularly exceptional one, which is part of why I'm here. But if you look at the demographics, you can't not notice how many children the average Orthodox woman is having at such an early age, and how infertile. I think it's like less fertile than women in Europe, non-religious Jews are. And eventually you just do the math and notice these things. And then there's the element of, people may not feel it, but there's just an element of siding with a winner. Look, all the momentums over there. It's just, that's where the energy is. That's where the good lunch on Saturday afternoon is. That's where you want to be social with other Jewish people. And Israel's obviously an exception because it's a Jewish state. So there are a lot of secular Israelis, and they all serve in the military, and there are things bonding. But I just can't see how there's any future whatsoever in the conservative movement in particular here. I mean, that's really what I'm saying. I didn't mean to be insulting. And frankly, you're so young, and you didn't grow up religious. I would be willing to bet you're going to be, within 5-10 years, whatever, however your life develops, just much more comfortable. I mean, frankly, I think right now you'd be more comfortable going to an Orthodox or a Chabad service or just hanging out where there's an energy, where you don't have to watch what you say about politics, where you don't have to worry about people hating you because they know who you are. That's just my view. And I don't think that it's applied across the line, because when I first moved to New York, I actually did go to Chabad, and the rabbi was very conservative, and we would have conversations privately. I mean, he'd invite me to his place for Shabbat, and he would say it's very difficult being a rabbi here in Westchester and New York in general, because people are so divided over these political issues. Oh, yeah, that is a problem.
And he said that, within the synagogue that I was attending, half the people were for Trump. They were conservative, and the others were just very, very liberal. And he told me that people actually had arguments and fights with each other and left services over political disagreements. But he was, he shared views very similar to mine. But look, even regardless of where you go, I feel like you can't have these open conversations, because I find Jewish people also to be, left-wing Jews, I'll say, to be some of the most intolerant people you will ever meet.
I don't disagree. I forgot you live in Westchester County, New York. All I can say, Laura, is you are welcome to come down here to Chabad of Greater Daytona Beach anytime. My parents visited me the first time they were ever here for Shabbos. This weekend it was my birthday. And I said to them, you don't have to worry about sharing your political views at all. But that's Northeast Florida. I don't know what percent of the population probably had a gun on them in there, but it is a regional thing to some extent. Northeast Florida is conservative. The Jews are largely Israeli and Sephardic, and I think you would feel very comfortable here, or plenty of other places in Florida, and you could probably say the same about Texas, Arizona, other parts of the country, but certainly here, whenever you have a lot of Israelis and a lot of Sephardic Jews, it's conservative. And the rabbi just doesn't even hold back, and he just says exactly what he thinks. He's not worried about offending anyone. In fact, there have been incidents with that, and they just don't care. Look, you want to be a liberal, fine, keep it to yourself. You're still welcome here. But we're basically out of time, Laura. This is great. I really do appreciate your coming on, changing the topic, because, Eliokim, who, by the way, you should meet online and stuff, because he's doing great stuff with Jews News, and you guys would hit it off a lot online.
Definitely. We'll have to meet.
Yeah, so thanks for being flexible and coming on this topic. And however you observe Tisha B'Av, which hopefully will not be talking politics at a Reform synagogue in Westchester County, I hope it's a worthwhile one for you. And you are totally welcome. I challenge you to come down here to Chabad of Greater Daytona at some point, or plenty of the other ones in the area, and your eyes will be opened about the way.
I know. I'll have to do that because, living here in Westchester, it's very disheartening.
I feel you. I know exactly what you're talking about. All right. Thanks for coming on today, Laura.
Great. Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks for having me.